If we started a GoFundMe to raise cap space for the Oilers, how much do you think we could raise?
40, $50.
Well, we might need to. Let's get into it with the lead. Damn it! Cap's supposed to go up. Makes me mad. Welcome into Oilers Nation every day, live on the Oilers Nation YouTube, and as always, coming to you live from the Sports Closet studio. Brian is in with the first comment of the show. He says, "Good morning, Mondays suck." Yeah, man, I feel you. Kildrak says, instead of having a case of the Mondays, I decided to have a case of beer. Giddy up.
Hey.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that approach. Lots of comments to get to on the Oilers Nation YouTube. Welcome into a new week of the show where we are really hoping our stream is having a case of the Mondays. That's what's up.
Get it a bag of beer or a crate. Maybe not a bag.
Bag of beer, nice. Like a bladder of beer.
That's what I said. A nice black bag of beer.
Used to be able to, they used to sell at the liquor store like a bladder of twisted tea. Did you ever get one of those? Or, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
No, you can get like a bladder of wine too.
Yeah.
Box of wine,
I've never ventured down that road.
Yeah, neither have I.
I can't think of a situation that I would want that.
One night I went and I was like, oh, better value. Instead of a case of beer, I got one of those mini kegs they sell. Like that big little Heineken keg. It was not that good. It's very foamy.
I've had one of those before too, and I remember half the night was just pumping the thing.
Yeah. Not a lot. It's not that great.
Just buy the cans.
Yep. All right. Well, we will talk some hockey today on the show. There's a lot of storylines to get to from the weekend around the NHL. So we'll call it the weekend notebook to kick off the show before we get into anything else. We have the Vegas Golden Knights going up 1-0 in the Stanley Cup final over the Florida Panthers. Not exactly stunning. It's going to be a tight series, I still think, back and forth. Sergei Bobrovsky looked human. Aiden Hill looked remarkable. But I'm not walking away from that game going, oh, the Panthers are screwed. Like, no. Like winning game one at home, that was an expected result.
Yeah, they down 1-0. I mean, that's what did Paul Maurice say after? He was like, "You guys are just trying to make a headline out of this," something like that, right?
Yeah, he said. I think he said like everyone needs to calm the bleep down.
Yeah, like you're not going to win 4 straight games. I think most of us think this series is going to go 6 or 7, which is either way, it goes Florida or Vegas. So yeah, it's not that surprising. But yeah, Aiden Hill, like. Lauren Brassois getting hurt might have been the best thing that happened to the Vegas Golden Knights this playoffs. It's been kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's something, man. Like, again, when he went down, I remember sitting at Rogers Place and being like, this is a turning point for the Edmonton Oilers. Damn it, it ended up being a turning point for the Vegas Golden Knights. Again, a 5-2 victory in game one. Matt Tkachuk got the boot at one point in that game. Like, it was a weird one for Florida. And again, I don't think the time off affected them all too much from like a they came out slow, blah, blah. They got the first goal of the game, Eric Stahl with a shorty. I think where it maybe affected them a little bit was they had so much time just getting amped up for this. And I think they were almost trying so hard to show that they weren't rusty that they ended up going a bit too far, going over a few lines that they shouldn't have. And Tkachuk was a good example of that.
Yeah, that's probably a fair thing to say. That the time off is always it's always good and bad, isn't it? Because on one regard, it's okay, well, now we can rest. And like, you had a game in Florida where you went to quadruple overtime or whatever it was, right? Like you're exhausted from that still, I'm imagining. So, yeah, you get all that, but then, you get into the game and sometimes your legs aren't right there for you, but I'm not really worried about Florida.
No, I wouldn't be either. And since this is Panthers Nation, we need to have a lot of confidence in our Florida Panthers. Mike Babcock, first reported by Darren Dreger, confirmed by a handful of other insiders, going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. It's been 4 years since Babcock was the head coach of the Jackets. And the way coaching contracts work in the NHL is if you get fired, the team that fired you still has to pay out your contract. They are fully guaranteed, right?
Yep.
But if you get a new job, the salary difference is the only thing the old team is on the hook for. So Mike Babcock had $5 million a year to the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Blue Jackets are going to hire him. If they would have hired him on June 1, then that means the Leafs would have gotten out of some amount of the final year of the final month, I should say, of Babcock's contract. He is waiting to sign with the Blue Jackets until July 1 so that the Leafs and only the Leafs pay out every penny of that contract. It is wildly petty, and I love it.
Doesn't that kind of show you who Mike Babcock is a little bit too?
I mean, it might also be a Blue Jackets thing. They're not exactly a cash-rich organization. They might have been like, hey, man, we're just going to wait until July 1 to make this official so we don't have to pay it.
Yeah, I guess he's still getting paid, so it doesn't matter to him that much. But I don't like it, Tyler. I am not in on this train. I think it's just an absolute terrible decision by the Columbus Blue Jackets to bring him back into the NHL. And I think it just shows that the NHL is just a carousel of the same people rotating through jobs. Like, you know, you got Babcock, who's now coming back into the picture, and we all know the story there. And then there's also the Peter Chiarelli somehow keeps getting into these conversations, different areas of it. But I just think surely there's somebody else, right? Like the Anaheim Ducks went in a peculiar direction today.
Hiring Greg Cronin, a 60-year-old who has like 12 years of being an assistant and a head coach for about 10 in the American League.
And you look at that one, you're like, okay, well, at least that guy is getting an opportunity here and see what he can do. And I just think for Columbus, like, you're trying to build this new identity where you bring a guy like Johnny Gaudreau, who probably didn't like playing under Daryl Sutter too much. And now you're bringing in a Mike Babcock who doesn't like young players. You can ask Mitch Marner about all of that. And it's just like, is this worth it? I think that's the question Columbus needs to ask themselves.
Yeah. Of the top 10 teams in the regular season in the NHL, Boston had a retread head coach, Jersey with Lindy Ruff, Vegas with Bruce Cassidy is a retread, Dallas, the Rangers, and Kings are all retreads. So 60% of the top 10 teams this year in the NHL had retread head coaches. The 4 that didn't were the Oilers with Jay Woodcroft, the Hurricanes with Rod Brindamore, the Leafs with Sheldon Keefe, and the 4th one on that list is Colorado with Jared Bednar. So
yeah, younger
it's
group.
Starting to move away a little bit, but to stay specific to Mike Babcock, it's a I called it today on DFO Live with Sarah Volley. I called it a boomer bust hire. Like, if he has learned his lesson and he knows that with the new generation of players, you can't just be, you know, the Army general anymore. You need to be a bit more of a friend, right? You can't, it's not just enough to bark out orders anymore. If he's learned his lesson and can be more of a player's coach, then it should be fine. Hey, Johnny Gaudreau had a 115-point season under Daryl Sutter. Patrick Laine had great years under Paul Maurice. Paul Maurice is more of a player's coach than Babcock ever has been. But still, if you're Babcock and you can maybe take on a bit more of a Paul Maurice-like angle in your second act, or third act, I should say, then I think it's interesting. I think it could work out. He is a darn good head coach when it comes to the X's and O's. He's won rings. He's gone to a ton of championships. I don't know if the fit's there with his Blue Jackets team, and if it doesn't go well, I think it's one of those things where it will look ugly at the 6-month mark of this regular season. I don't think it's something where it's like, it was okay, it had its up and downs. I think it's either going very well or very terribly.
Yeah, I think only time will tell, and people in the chat saying he was at the University of Saskatchewan, and like maybe we need to relax a little bit. But also, like, how many head coaches who have been sacked have former players continuously come out and say how much they hate this guy?
Like, all the time.
All of them.
To be fair, a lot of players come out and say, I liked him.
Babcock?
Right? Yeah, like, I mean, there are the guy. I mean, it's split, vocal, right? For sure. Vocal, and there aren't as many that have come out and said I liked him, but there are guys who come out and say, yeah, like, he's hard on you, but you're a professional athlete. Like,
I just think it's interesting that, like, you don't hear that. There's never that split decision with many other coaches, right? Yep. And I just think there's ways to get away from this.
Yeah. What else? I wanted to hit on what the YouTube chat was saying. Christopher Palmer said Babcock just spent time in the University of Saskatchewan. Young players, something to think about. I heard mixed reviews about his time there.
Yeah. Like,
so, I mean, yeah, I don't know if that was necessarily where he went to learn how to deal with young players. I think he was just looking for something to do, if we're being honest. Davin is in and says, I'm sorry for not liking last week. I think it takes a big person to apologize, right? Anyways, not easy to admit your mistakes. Don't be like Davin. Hit the like button on today's show live on the Oilers Nation YouTube. Mainlander Tim wants to know, is there going to be a nation vacation to watch the Jays this summer? Yeah, maybe. I think we're talking about it a little bit, but nothing for sure. What else do we got here? Good news at Cole Caufield extension. Yes, let's talk about that. An 8-year deal for Cole Caufield, which is his one and only nickname, Cole Caufield.
Yeah.
8-year deal, $7.5 million. So it comes in like $200K less than what they gave their captain, Nick Suzuki. I love this. He's scoring at like a 40-goal pace early in his career. It's a gamble when you commit this much term and money to someone who hasn't played 150 games. But Cole Caufield does the thing that is the most difficult to do in this sport. He scores goals. And we know eventually, and we'll get to this in a second, that the cap's going to start jumping. And when it does, it'll really start jumping. So you're telling me 4 years from now, say the cap's up 16, 17 million bucks. We're dealing with $100 million ceiling potentially. And you're going to have your franchise center and your franchise winger, this dynamic duo, you're going to have them for like 15 mil. That's a tidy little bit of business from the Montreal Canadiens. I think they did a good job here. And like 7.8 million isn't even superstar money. And Cole Caufield, I think, has superstar potential.
I do too. I mean, it's kind of funny, isn't it, where he was when Martin St. Louis came in. That guy, if I remember correctly, just couldn't hit a barn door.
Yeah.
Like he was doing nothing right. And then all of a sudden, you get this new injection of confidence. And here he is with 26 goals in 46 games last season. Like he is such a unique talent. I remember when he got drafted, the Oilers obviously took Caufield. They took Broberg. I wanted Caufield so bad when they took him. I think, like you said, the hardest thing to do in sports, in this sport, is score goals. And that's all he's done his entire career. It's quite funny actually looking back at his assists. He had 10 assists this season. Like he's hit closer to 10 assists in most years and 30 goals.
Yeah.
It's just kind of wild what he does. He's what was that player called? Brandon Peary?
Yeah, we were talking about him last week.
He's Brandon Peary, but a little better.
A little, hey? Just a little bit better than Brandon Peary. Marshall said, everyone said Draisaitl's $8.5 million contract was crazy when it was signed. Now it's the best contract in the NHL. And yeah, I think people right now are maybe saying like, oh, too rich for Cole Caufield. Oh, like doesn't know how to play defense, all this stuff. Dude, if he's popping home 50 in year 3 of that deal, if in the 8-year deal he has 4 50-goal seasons, it's a hair over $7 million. Like if you're going to try build a Stanley Cup contender, these are the risks you need to take.
Do you know, on the defense thing, like, yeah, you obviously want guys to know how to play defense, but like you said, if you're putting home 50, that's probably just as good.
Better.
What did
Barry Trotz say the other day when he was
he
was talking to the media, the new GM of the Nashville Predators, and he said he told his scouts to take swings. He said, I can find you 3rd and 4th liners. You go out and get me guys who bring fans into the building.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. Like the easier part of building up a contender is finding your 3rd and 4th line players, finding guys who can kill penalties and centermen and all of the, or like a bottom 6 center. I know that's ironically the thing the Oilers have struggled the most with.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, the easiest thing to do is to go get those bottom 6 guys who play hard for you. And I think Montreal's also done a good job of getting that so far with guys like Pizzetta and whatnot. But
yeah. Do you know, it's funny, after Trotz made that comment, I kind of looked back at like some of the Oilers drafts recently, and to their credit, they've done a pretty good job of grabbing some showstoppers as well. Like Petrov, Savoy, Holloway, like they've actually got some pretty high-end talent coming as well. So it's funny, Trotz as a head coach is like a different perspective, I guess you would think, because like I can find anyone like that. Speaking of that, did you hear about the Nick Bukestad stuff that on Sean Bell's show?
No.
So Sean Bell and Tom Gazzola have their show on 1260, right?
Yeah.
And they have Mark Pissick on the show. Who Nick Bukestad lives in Mark Pissick's house. I believe.
Oh, like Bukestad. Oh, when he came at the deadline, he's living in Mark Pissick's house. So
they asked him, they're like, hey, what can you tell us about Bukestad coming back? And he said that his friends, it's funny you said this off the top too, like said like, we'll create a GoFundMe page for the Oilers to afford him to come and play next season. So Bukestad wants to come back. Supposedly, it's just a matter of money.
Yeah.
Which is good. 50-50.
50-50. It always is a matter of money. I think he's priced himself out of the market.
Me too. He's been way too good. He deserves it.
And that does kind of bring us to our Sherwood Ford Giant offseason question for the day. Shout out to Sherwood Ford, the Giant. In the month of June, every time you go for a test drive at Sherwood Ford, you know what they do? They make a donation to charity. That's what you get at Sherwood Ford, the Giant. Fantastic service, and they are very community-minded, which is why we love partnering up with them. I just want to get, what's the details on that again? I didn't have the right tab open, Liam. Classic. Happens all the time. Anyway, shout out to Sherwood Ford. The donations go to the Strathcona Community Hospital Foundation. Every test drive taken by consumers this month. So head out to Sherwood Ford, the Giant, and go. Maybe you want to hop in a new Mustang. Yes. Have you seen the Mustang like SUVs, the electric ones or whatever?
No, I have not.
They're like the Mach-E's, I think they're called. They're sick.
Mustang SUV.
Yeah, look it up.
SUV. Electric?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah. You've seen them on the road. They are pretty popular.
This little guy.
Aren't those cool as hell?
Those do look pretty nice.
Yeah.
Much better than the, do you remember when Porsche converted to an SUV?
Yeah.
That might be the ugliest car I've ever seen. Aside from those cube things that some people make.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not for me.
Yep. Mustang SUV, though. Pretty legit.
Maybe it's my new car.
So Gary Bettman has his press conference. He touches on a few things. There was like some shit about the Coyotes, and it's like, whatever, don't care. Some stuff about expansion. It's like, don't really buy it. An interesting thing on Valeri Nichushkin and Bettman saying that the Avalanche like handled it well. Like, well, all they did was kind of tell Nichushkin to go away and then ignore it. I don't know if that's handling it well. He's not going to face discipline from the league. I think he should probably face discipline from the Avalanche. I guess maybe they could tell you, well, we sent him home for the rest of the playoffs. That was his discipline.
Maybe it's 2 games.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. But the interesting part was when Bettman was relatively adamant that the cap's only going up $1 million.
Yeah, he was pretty confident when he said that.
Frank today on DFO Live still kind of said, he used the comparison of this is like throwing raw meat at the Players Association and seeing if they'll bite. They're in a negotiation. It's not as simple as the usual calculation to what the salary cap will be because of the escrow and the debt and words I don't quite understand. But Gary Bettman's in the middle of a negotiation. He is not going to come out to the media and he's calculated. I've sat in these press conferences with him before. He knows what he's talking about. He kind of knows what the questions are going to be. He knew this one would get brought up. In the middle of a negotiation with the PA, he's not going to sit there and say, hey, the owners and the GMs would love to see the cap go up $3 million, and we're very eager to make it happen. Obviously not. They're trying to get what they want out of the PA in this negotiation. Marty Walsh came out after. He had some stuff to say about the Coyote situation and this. So, listen, am I less confident that it's going up $3 million? Yeah. Is it a guarantee lock at this point to go up only $1 million like Gary wants you to believe? No, it's not. Things change very quickly in this world.
I don't believe a word that Gary Bettman says until
I very rarely
happens.
do.
And that's not to say he's a liar. He just knows what he has to say, right? Like isn't he a lawyer? Like, isn't that kind of what he is? Like, pretty much. Like, that's what he's got to do. So, yeah, look, the salary cap's going to go up. Hopefully, it's a bit more than $1 million to benefit the Oilers a little bit more. But I would take what he says with a grain of salt until it's on paper, right? Like, it'll be interesting. The players, I could see it $2 million. That's kind of my guess, like somewhere in the middle.
2.5. Okay.
Yeah.
People are complaining the video's not lined up, so give us 1 second. You're ready. There we go.
That took a little bit longer than I thought we were.
Yeah, usually our resets are like, you wouldn't even notice them if you're watching. That reset was definitely a little laggy, but hopefully we solved our issue there. Marshall says, Bettman would never lie to us.
Yeah, let's not forget Bettman comes out every season and tells us game starting time too. So
yeah, league's in a great spot on and off the ice. George Peros, immaculate job as the head of player safety.
Told us the refs were the best they've ever been last season too. So
which might be true, but
hey, yeah,
I don't know if it's
a long ways to go then.
Yeah, if you're watching on the Oilersnation YouTube, hammer that like button. Oilers Nation every day. We're talking about the Sherwood Ford Giant offseason question. If the cap only goes up by $1 million, how much does that change the Oilers' offseason plans? And here's what I'll say. I actually think it directly affects Warren Fogel's future as an Edmonton Oiler. I
think that's fair. I kind of was addressing this last week too. Yeah. It's like he makes just a little bit too much.
Okay, $5.9 million. It goes up only $1 million. That's how much space the Oilers are going to have right now. That's an $83.5 million cap. Yeah. So the math we did last week, I think you need to put 3.5 aside for Coston and McLeod to bring them both back. I think you need to put 1.8 aside for Ryan and Janmark. So 3.5 plus 1.8 is 4.5, 5.3 million. That means you would have $600K left. You would have 12 forwards on your roster. Okay, that's decent. You would have 7 D-men signed, but that doesn't include Bouchard. So $600K to get Bouchard done. Not enough. You need at least 3.25. So you need to dump Kyler Yamamoto. Even a Yamo buyout at that point almost doesn't give you enough money to sign Evan Bouchard unless, and this could be the answer, one of the answers, how does a $1 million cap increase affect things? It might have to be a 1-year deal for Evan Bouchard. He has no ARB rights this year. He will next summer. Remember, Ryan McLeod was basically forced into taking whatever the Oilers would offer him. He took a little bit less to help them with their cap situation. You might have to go like 1 year, $2 million with Bouchard this season. Just to be like, hey, we got to punt it down the line. And if he doesn't sign an offer sheet somewhere, that's the only leverage play he has. And that rarely ever happens in today's NHL. So I'm looking at this and going, you might actually only be able to do 1 year for Evan Bouchard if the cap only goes up 1 mil.
Do we know how much those ARB rights would be around for the year after? Like what that could be?
Well, the ARB thing, I think it's dependent. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think there's any like hard numbers there.
Yeah, that's
It would be concerning to go to ARB with that guy.
sure,
If he puts up
yeah.
65 points as a D-man,
Yeah.
you're looking at probably a $7 million ARB case. So you might have to go long-term with Bouchard next summer if you only go 1 year now.
Right. And do you know the wild thing? The others don't really have like bad contracts.
No.
Like I know people are going to point to the nurse one, whatever, but like Yamamoto and Warren Fogle are like the two that are on there, and they make $6 million combined. But I think those two might have to go just for the idea of like you got to create more flexibility with this team in ways, and it just seems like an option. Fogle I would like to keep, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. So you basically have 600K. You're going to move Yamamoto off your roster, replace him with, I mean, no one, I guess, at that point, because I was counting him in the 12 forwards you'd have signed. So you'd want to replace Yamamoto with someone making league min to be your 13th forward.
Yeah.
So now you've just freed up 2.3, add that onto your 600K, you have 2.9. Like, if the cap only goes up 1 mil, you need to move Fogle and Yamo just to get Bouchard done, potentially. Unless, again, Bouchard's going to come in very low. And at that point, you have no money to replace forwards in your lineup.
Yeah, I think it's becoming very apparent the more and more we talk about this that the Oilers are going into the season with 12 forwards and 6 defensemen.
And just running a low roster again?
I think they're just doing that, and someone gets hurt, that's how they do it.
Yeah.
That's the way I think it's going to roll for them, just because there was a point last season too where they were able to do emergency call-ups, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what they'll try and just get themselves into, just to spend as much as they can on quality.
Yeah. The one thing I actually didn't factor in there is, that's the roster with Niemelainen on it. So you're not starting the year with all three of Broberg, Desharnais, and Niemelainen on there once Bouchard signed. One of them is going down. So I guess that's a little bit of an extra thing. Let's add that 700K to the 600 we talked about that you have left over after signing all your free agent forwards. So you really have 1.3. So moving Yamo is enough then, I suppose, to get Bouchard done to a 1 or 2 year bridge deal. But you can't do anything else after that. So if you wanted to go get a Connor Brown, or if you wanted to go sign a JVR or do anything, it probably needs to come at the cost of Warren Fogle as well. Which, again, when you start to look at how this lineup could take shape next year, you got McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Kane, Nuge. You got your 5 big guns. Okay, if both Yamo and Fogle are gone, you're running Holloway, Coston, McLeod, Janmark, Derek Ryan as your 5 bottom sixers. And then you're, at that point, banking on Lavoie winning a job. And banking on whoever you sign for league min being able to check in and be an impact everyday player for you. And there's still, again, if you trade both Fogle and Yamamoto, I guess you'd at that point have the money to maybe get a Connor Brown. But there's a lot of things that are very connected, and it all starts with how much the cap is going to go up. If it goes up 3, it's going to feel like freaking Christmas morning in that Oilers front office. Because all of a sudden you're like, boom, we're keeping Fogle. Yeah, we're still trading Yams. Bang, we're bringing in Connor Brown, and we're good. All of our pieces kind of line up.
You're kind of out there this summer, if it doesn't go up, looking for your Carter Verhaeghe, right? Someone who can maybe take that elevated step into the team, but they're going to have to find some bargains from somewhere. But it was reported the other week from Nugent-Hopkins that the Oilers are looking for low-end cost forwards, like veterans, that kind of guys. So I don't know. I don't really have too many names on the list for us right now, but it's going to be a tight squeeze. I wrote an article yesterday on Oilersnation too, just talking about how Frank said, like, none of the core are going anywhere either. Like, it's going to be really small details that get changed.
Wise Kyle says McLeod and Coston will be 1.25 and 1 million respectively. Bouch will be 3x3. Ditch Janmark, League Min Ryan. Wildly team friendly on all 3 of those fronts. If you're going 3 years with Bouchard, it starts with a 5. And I don't think McLeod is worth more than 1 million. And he has ARB rights now. And you have to remember, like, the way these things are usually looked at is 100K per point is like the general baseline that people like do this. Now, as an that's for UFAs. As an RFA, you lose a little bit of that. McLeod had 23 points in 57 games. Like, I think, and that was only 57 games as well. He is worth $2 million to this team.
I think so too.
If he was on the open market as a UFA, he probably gets like 2.5. Maybe it's lower because, again, ARB rights, he's an RFA, whatever. But if you think that contract isn't going above 1.5, you are mistaken. Cole Caufield, same kind of boat, man. If that guy wants to sign an offer sheet somewhere or whatever, like at the end of the day, he doesn't have a ton of rights because of his contract status, but 21 points in 57 games, that guy has value. He's not a $1 million player anymore.
I think he's the reason why you could move Warren Fogle, though.
Probably. I think you can give a bigger role to him next year. Absolutely.
I think you could. Proved himself this season.
Yep.
I think the Oilers need to just put more trust in him. Obviously, something's got to get out of his game, but it's the way he is, right? He's an aggressive player plays with a bit of passion, I think is fair to say. So that he'd be the reason why. But yeah, I think we're looking at 1.5 minimum for Coston, I think.
And Christopher Palmer says, what about CC? You don't have the money to upgrade CC anymore. I think that ship's kind of sailed. Like, just looking at the landscape of things, it's going to be really, really tight. Wise Kyle says, sign Brown, trade Yamo, sign Severson. You don't have money to do that. Add a depth JVR to JVR is going to take you $2.5 million. CC's going to cost you $6 million. Like, again, you can't just throw out random stuff and pretend the cap's going to be $90 million next year. Like, that's not how this stuff kind of works. So some people talking about Corey Perry. I don't think there's any shot they sign Perry. That guy's staying in Tampa.
I don't know what it would be about him. It's just the idea of, like, after all these years, Corey Perry becomes an Edmonton Oiler. Like,
it'd be funny.
It would be funny.
Christopher Palmer says the Bakersfield kids need the puck too. Lavoie, Holloway, Broberg, I think those three could be in the mix. I think if you're hoping someone else cracks his team, you're gonna be left disappointed.
The Bakersfield Condors will be very, very good next season.
Really?
The talent they have, even with the guys coming up, but also, like, those guys aren't in conversation for the others this season. However, for the year after, I think that's when we can start talking about a few more players in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. There's your Sherwood Ford Giant offseason question. If the cap only goes up $1 million, how much will that change the Oilers offseason? The answer is drastically.
Yes.
It's the difference probably between 1 or 2 years for Evan Bouchard. It's the difference between Fogle being here and him not being here. The ripple effect of this cap potentially not changing very much is significant. But don't take Gary's word for it. Is kind of what I'm saying here.
Gary's a liar.
They're going to want...
Gary's on the naughty list.
Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, it makes sense for... Like, obviously, the players want the cap to go up because an extra $2 million means an extra $60 million that teams could potentially spend on free agents, player salary. It makes sense. From an owner GM perspective, and again, the owners are the ones that ultimately Gary has to report to, but the owners also want to win. And I think there will be plenty of owners who will be sitting there going, hey, let's get the cap up. Like, let's go. Let's start moving in the right direction here. If it goes up $1 million this year, next year it could go up 7, or you could do 3 this year, 5 next year, right? Like, just do it.
One of those owners that I promise you will be petitioning for this is Mr. Cates.
Probably.
He will want this very, very badly.
Yep. There you go. There's our Giant offseason question for Sherwood Ford. The Giant, every test drive this month means a donation from Sherwood Ford to the Strathcona Community Hospital Foundation, sherwoodford.ca. Every day we do a new player card, Liam. And today our player card, or actually it was last week too, brought to you by UFC. We're only 6 days away, 5 days away, depending how you count, from UFC 289. Aldana versus Nunez.
Yep.
That's a big one. 6 Canadians on the card. That's fun.
It's going to be a doozy. Oliveira.
You've been big on that one.
Yeah, he's a good one. I was watching some of his highlights the other day from when he fought Chandler. He just beat him up. He is a fierce man. I would not like to get in an octagon with, well, quite frankly, any of them.
Yep, that's a good point.
Specifically him, he would be number one.
Live from Rogers Arena in Vancouver on June 10th, and live in your living room with the pay-per-view broadcast. Today's player grade, we finished Fogle. He was 37. No other players are in the 30s. No players in the 40s.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess we got rid of Cassian.
And I think Demers might have worn it.
Oh, Demers was 47.
Yeah. So we had to go all the way to the 50s. And it's Dylan Holloway's turn for the player grade. The rookie spent the first half of the season up in Edmonton. And I think after his preseason hat trick, we were all hoping for a lot. Instead, he only scored 3 goals in his 51 games. Our expectations definitely got the best of us. The preseason Kool-Aid set up Dylan Holloway to fail, and that is disappointing. I'm not ultimately giving him a failing grade. I went with a C- for his regular season grade, Liam. 9 points in 51 games, 3 goals. That's not very good. There were ugly turnovers, bad penalties, not a lot of great moments. But at the end of the day, he was an everyday NHL player for the first half of the year. and he got valuable experience. So I went C-.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You don't want to be too harsh on the kid, do
No.
you? Like, he got put in some bad situations sometimes. I mean, what was it, game 3? He got his head blown off because Warren Fogle just gave him a suicide pass. So, yeah, kind of a tough one, but goes down to Bakersfield. Does well. Unfortunate injury for him, too. I think it was the first game he got nailed.
Scored and then got hurt, right?
Yeah, and then came back and was promising. So, next season's going to be good for him, I think. The pressure will be off, I guess you could say. But it was quite funny watching him go from the preseason hat trick to, what was it, his first shift in the NHL, right on the tape of JT Miller.
Yeah.
It's like, yikes.
Instead of doing a playoff grade, because he didn't factor into the playoffs, I went with a Bakersfield grade, because that was kind of the back half of Holloway's season. And he had some really good numbers down in Baco. So just looking at the box scores, I think he deserves an A, because he went down there, he scored 7 goals in 12 games. That's really good. You're someone who kind of keeps tabs on Bakersfield a lot closer than I do. Is an A a fair grade for what Holloway did down there?
Yeah, I mean, you just from an Oilers fan perspective too, like, you want him to go down there, you want him to see him score points, and that's exactly what he did, right? And seems to be consistent with it all as well. You would have liked to maybe see him contribute a little bit more in the playoffs with no points, but Bakersfield weren't great. So yeah, I think that's fair. I think coming up this season, it's the big thing for him is just momentum. I feel like that's what he needs to continue to thrive. And I'm excited to see what Holloway is capable of, because the Oilers will need him more this season than they kind of needed him the last season. We'll see.
Yeah. He, last time he worked his way onto the 4th line, and it was just like, hey, he's getting experience, whatever. At times we were like, hey, get this guy a top 6 look. Like, come on. And he did get a few, and I thought he looked fine there. This year, it's more of like okay, you can't, it's not just enough to be there. You need to be an impact top 9 winger for this team. And that's not, I don't think it's totally unfair. He's heading into what'll be his age 22 season. He turns 22 at the end of September. So giddy up, right? 22 years old, mid-round, first-round pick, 14th overall. In today's NHL, you should be making an impact at 22 for where he was drafted.
Who's in his draft class?
Seth Jarvis is making an impact, went 1 pick before him. I think that might have been who the Oilers would have taken if he would have fallen 1 more. Anton Lundell taken 3 before him, making an impact, right?
Cole Caufield.
Yeah.
Yeah, then right behind him, Dawson Mercer's doing well.
Braden Schneider's an everyday D-man. Jake Neighbors was almost an everyday forward with the St. Louis Blues. Like, there are other guys.
It's a good draft class.
Actually. Yeah, it actually was a really good draft class. So, yeah, if you're Dylan Holloway, giddy up, man. I'm excited for him next year. Like, that's not me being like, oh, if he has a bad year, he's a bust. No. I actually think he's going to have a good year. I'm just saying, like, I'm high on the guy, and I'm excited to see him come through next season.
Yep, I am too.
There you go. There's your player grade for UFC 289 Saturday pay-per-view. You won't want to miss it. Headlined by Nunez versus Aldana. Here's what you said in the chat about that. Owen says D+ for the regular season, A in Bakersfield. Ryan says C- is fair. Life went downhill after his first bad pass. I mean, yeah, that was his first play of the regular season. Sean said, I'll give Dylan the villain a C-. Davin adds the ceiling is high. Ryan says 35 points next year. I could see 35 points for Dylan Holloway next season.
I had him as the Calder winner this year, so won't be as bad next year.
Chance of returning 97%. I couldn't go 100 because you never know. Like, if there's a team out there who has this great player on the trade market, right? And they go, we just want Dylan Holloway. You probably have to consider it to some extent, right? But I don't think the Oilers obviously are going out and like shopping the guy.
He's probably in conversations.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be someone that
teams will ask about him if you're making a deal kind of thing.
For sure.
Yep. Speaking of trade, let's go to today's trade machine, which actually was inspired by a DM I got from Spencer Powell on Instagram. So if you have mock trades, not just for the Oilers, but for any team around the NHL, feel free to hit me up in the DMs, and you could be featured as part of the AMA Travel trade machine. Shout out to AMA Travel. AMAtravel.ca. I'm into Nashville at the end of the month for our friends at AMA and Betway. That should be fun. 5 days in Nashville. I'm sure I'll find something to do, even though the Oilers only pick 3 times while I'm there. NHL awards as well, so get to see Connor McDavid grab his 2nd or 3rd career Hart Trophy. Third career Hart Trophy.
He went back to back.
Yeah, he did. So here's your trade machine today. Spencer says, who says no to a swap between Edmonton and Vancouver? It's Kyler Yamamoto going out the door and Connor Garland going the other way. To make this one more interesting, we did $950K retained on Connor Garland, which would bring Garland's cap hit down to $4 million. But the 27-year-old has 3 more seasons remaining. It would then, for the next year, in a way, for the Canucks, bring Yamamoto's cap hit up to an even $4 million, but it's done at the end of this year. So Canucks get the younger player. They could trial him out, maybe re-sign him at the end of it. The Oilers get a guy who's more experienced, still undersized at just 5'10", 165 pounds, but 17 goals in 81 games last year, 19 goals in 77 games the year before, 12 and 49 the year before, 22 and 68, then in his rookie year, 13 and 47. He's kind of been right around that 20 goal mark for back-to-back years now. Almost 3 if you were to prorate the 2020-21 season, which was ultimately cut short. I'm intrigued by it, but then he's your move, right? Like if you're doing this swap, then Fogle is the cap casualty to get Bouchard, and you're not bringing in a Connor Brown or a JVR. So he's your shot. Is he worth being the shot? I think I prefer Connor Brown. I would rather dump Yamo and sign Connor Brown than bring in Garland for 3 more years at $4 million.
I think there's a lot of layers to this trade, because I think 1-for-1, the Oilers are getting the better player. Makes sense for Vancouver in the sense that they get out of the contract a lot sooner. They're talking about like, we're in a retool, not a rebuild, whatever they've been calling it. I just don't know if the Oilers will want to add that extra $1 million to their cap. We just discussed the situation they're in. I think this trade only happens if the cap goes up $3 million.
That's fair.
I think that's the only way I could see this.
But then even then, you're probably still having to sacrifice Fogle.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of layers to it. That's the thing, isn't it? Would you rather have Garland, Brown, or JVR? It's kind of the
Brown
three
probably
in the position,
and
right?
Brown probably doesn't cost you 3x4, which is ultimately what Garland is. So I think I say no to that, actually.
I'm out on it too. Also, have you seen these junior numbers? They are outstanding. 39 goals on 128 points in 62 games in his 20-year-old season. To 100, that wasn't even his career high. The year before, he had 129. Never hit those numbers in the NHL.
Oh, you never know. 97 shooter.
Yeah, hey? There's clearly untapped potential with the 27-year-old.
Rami is in and has a question about cap space with McDavid and Draisaitl. Send it in tomorrow. We're running out of time today. I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about that tomorrow. Tyler Mulick says if Mantha gets bought out, then that is your best pickup. The only thing with Mantha is he shoots the wrong way, right? I think he's a left shot. So do you really want to add another left shot here? I don't know. Can Anthony Mantha play the right side? I don't know. But he's 6'5", 234 pounds. He would look interesting in this top 6.
He is listed as a right winger.
NHL.com has, oh yeah, he is listed as a right winger. Okay. So he's a left shot that knows how to play the right side. Yeah, that if you could get him for like $2 million and he's just doing like, because how old is he?
28.
If he's doing give me 1 year to rebuild my value, this is where you do it, man. Edmonton's the home of that.
234 pounds.
It's a big boy.
6'5".
He put on mass.
That is a Holland player. Actually, Holland would have drafted him.
Yeah, he would have.
Also,
yeah, he would have.
Because it would have been here.
Would Tyler Wright have drafted him? Or was Wright never that high up in Detroit?
2013 draft this was. So let's look up Tyler Wright.
You do that. I'll see what's going on in the chat. Tyler Mulick says, I'm not sure if I think Garland's as big of an upgrade as to what's available. I think I agree with that. A lot of people saying if you're flipping Yamo to Vancouver, then Hoglander is the player you want to go get. Tons of skill, got some upside there. Vancouver is over the cap right now, so they can't afford to bring in Yamo and just move out Hoglander. So I don't think there's a fit there. Vancouver needs to shed money, not bring in more.
Tyler Wright was with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Year after, though. Oh, do you know what? Maybe, because it would have been this summer between this Columbus and Detroit switch. So he could have.
Yeah, we're just going to go ahead and say Tyler Wright probably liked him.
Yeah.
There you go.
Where did he get drafted? 20th overall.
Columbus was the pick before, and they passed on him. So maybe there's a 50-50 chance. Tyler Wright either really likes him or really doesn't like him.
Yeah, there is.
They went with Kirby Reichel the spot before. I remember him being a guy I thought was going to be fucking awesome.
I remember him too. He looked like he had some talent there. But Anthony Mantha, not as many points in the queue as Connor Garland. Something to consider.
Well, there you go. There's our trade machine for AMA Travel. We'll chat some more trades throughout the week. Frank Cervalli stopping in on Wednesday this week on the show as well. Friday, I'm off.
Yes.
Which means it's a Liam and Jay show.
It is.
Or maybe just a Liam show. I don't know.
Maybe just a Jay show.
Maybe just an Aaron show. Aaron like hits start in his desk and then like runs around here. All right, the Betway Other Sports Report, Game 2, Stanley Cup Final. Well, that's the same sport, I guess, but it's available on Betway, 19+. Please play responsibly. What do you make of this one? I think Florida bounces back?
Yeah, we'll go with the Panthers tonight.
3 props I like. 2 of them plus money. Mark Stone over 2.5 shots, had 7 in Game 1. Anthony Duclair to grab a point, also plus money. He had a goal last game, has been awesome in these playoffs for the Cats. Riley Smith to pick up a point, scored a goal in Game 1. He seems to be finding his groove. He's one of those guys who has Stanley Cup Final experience. 2 plus money. Riley Smith is -105. 3 props I like on Betway, 19+. Please play responsibly. Miami Heat taking Game 2 of the NBA Finals, shooting the lights out. An offensive clinic from Jimmy and Bam. Is it maybe time to bet on the Nuggets, though? Like I always say, once the series gets tight, it moves on. There's usually value. I would imagine public money's pushing this thing more and more towards Denver because I'm not the only one having this idea. But man, Miami did put up a good fight.
Yeah, they did. I mean, Miami, they've got that dog in them, right, Aaron?
Denver is still minus like 200 to win this thing, but taking them on the series spread at Betway, Denver to win Game 3 and win the series is even money. That's relatively tempting. Nuggets to win 4-2 is plus 300. That actually might be the play. I think Miami can steal one at home, but Denver to win this thing in 6 is probably a good spot.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like when Denver show up, Miami won't be able to compete.
But I think betting on one more game to just even like Game 1 on the surface was a blowout. But when Miami got rolling in the 4th, like they went on a couple nice extended runs, man.
Yeah, it's true. It just kind of depends. It's all on Jamal Murray, really. Is Jamal Murray rolling with the Joker, or is it just the Joker dragging the dogs on his own?
Yeah, fair. MLB action. Alek Manoah getting the start for the Jays. Jays return home after a road trip. They swept the New York Mets, which was awesome.
Suck it, Mets.
Their bats are coming alive, but they gassed the bullpen. They went Pearson, Swanson, Romano in Game 3 of that series. So all 3 could potentially not be available tonight. Manoah is starting. He's been brutal. The Astros are good. Just took 3 of 4 from the LA Angels. This is probably about as close to a scheduled loss as you can get for the Toronto Blue Jays. I am very nervous about it, but I still kind of want to bet on them. They're favorites, though. They're favorites.
Well, Houston will probably cheat their way to victory anyway.
Classic Astros.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. There you go. There's our Betway Other Sports Report. Tyler Mulick says double Florida championship this year would be something if Miami and if the Panthers and Heat both finished it off. We'll talk more. You guys got some questions about blue lines and things like that. Save those questions for tomorrow. We'll get to some listener questions and more tomorrow on the show. But that's going to be a wrap for today's edition of Oilers Nation Every Day, live from the Sports Closet studio, brought to you by Sherwood Ford, UFC 289, AMA Travel, and Betway. Will be back noon Mountain Time tomorrow. I'll chat with you then.